and so this, like I've had Dr. Dale Bredesen on the show as well, and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
talks about the 36 holes in the roof, and that we need a
right,
systems approach, that it's an energy deficit basically in the brain that's causing it. So one intervention is not the way to approach it. We need a systems approach, and
right.
I like that. And that's the way I intuitively did it with my mother without having the years of research that you guys have had, but tapping into the research from people like Dr. Bredesen and
Yep.
utilizing what I could. And I've seen the proof. So I know that the brain can go from being like mush, like no,
Right.
hardly any higher function, back to fully functioning, then to be hit with mum's had
Hmm.
more than 24 concussions because she had to learn to walk again, and she has
Hmm.
normotensive hydrocephalus, of which I cannot influence because that's in the brain, the water in the brain, and we can't get a stent. And so we're
Hmm.
we're 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 limited with the vestibular, so she's going to fall on occasion, which is the biggest risk factor we have, right? But then I've seen her have brain tumors and then go through brain surgery, go back to being completely gone, and then come back. And then I've seen her with UTIs lose her again. I mean, just
Same thing.
a month ago, she lost all ability again. And then we got the infection under control. We're doing the daily Dr. Lulim's Violite. We're doing the hyperbaric
Good.
again. We're doing the everything.
Hmm.
And we're going to talk about the Neuradiant 1070, which I'm very keen to get my hands on. And I've seen her
Definitely.
come back, and now she's back reading to her grandchildren and happy. And yeah, yeah. For those watching on the thing, we're going to get to that because that thing is going to be, and the neuronic 1070 is going to be very exciting. So I know that when people say to me, "Oh, my wife's been diagnosed with dementia," we're on the decline, and that's it. There's nothing we can do. We can take some drugs to slow it down, and I'm like, no. No, there is so much from diet to exercise to
Yep.
lifestyle. Those things are hard because you're trying to get older people to make changes, right, to their
Right.
things. And so when I came across the whole red light stuff and near infrared and all the photobiomodulation, I was like, well, that's the easiest part of the equation to do. So, I
Sure.
mean, that's probably
Sure.
a bit of a step off point for us to talk about the quiet mind and the
Yeah.
neuradiant.
Well, so the Quiet Mind Foundation did the research on the 1070 technology that Professor Chazot, who's the chairman of pharmacology at Durham University in the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
he was the one with working with Dr. Dougal, and they developed the animal models and some of the other technology. And then Dr. Dougal asked me to take over the human clinical trials here in the US, where it was
Mm-hmm.
easier to get those kind of clinical trials working because Quiet Mind could do its own research.
Right.
We could design our own protocols, we could get them approved. We had our own ethics board, so
Wow.
we could manage that process a lot more efficiently. So we did the clinical trials on the Cognitolite, and we did that with our study partners at Texas at Baylor Scott and White Hospital in Temple, Texas. It was Professor Jason Wang
Mm-hmm.
and Damir Nizmutinov in the Department of Neurosurgery. And they were very forward-thinking people who really, as healers of the brain, were interested in seeing how can we help people not need brain surgery? How can we help people recover faster from brain surgery? They were really thinking more systemically, like Dr. Bredesen.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a study where we had people take the helmet home. They used it twice a day for 2 months. And we showed that their scores on the mini mental status exam went up on average 4 to 5 points,
Mm-hmm.
which meant they went from like moderate Alzheimer's to mild cognitive impairment.
Yeah, amazing, which is huge for the quality of life.
And so they were able to function. And there was a subgroup of people in the study who had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Mm.
And they reported, I mean, it wasn't part of the study, but they reported at the end of the study less apathy, more involvement in family activities, more expressiveness, more emotional, responsiveness, better gait, better mood, better sleep. All of those Parkinsonian symptoms
Mm.
significantly improved,
Wow.
as well as the dementia. So we knew that we had something really useful. But what I kept trying to tell Dr. Dougal was that because I knew about the neurofeedback, I knew that if we could modify the brain electrical activity at the same time as we were delivering the light, we could have kind of a 2-for-1 effect, that we could modify the brain EEG toward normal while we were actually influencing the health of the brain itself biologically.
Wow.
So that's why I developed the Neuradiant, which has the ability to deliver the same wavelength of light as the Cognito light, but it's significantly lighter and easier and a little sexier looking.
Yeah.
And the other important part is that each quadrant of the helmet can be independently controlled. So we can see, using quantitative EEG measurement, brain mapping, we can then see what kind of differences are there, abnormalities, if you will, in brain electrical activity in the different parts of the brain. We can then pulse the light on the scalp at that location, and it will then influence the brain electrical activity at the same time as the neurons and the mitochondria are absorbing the photons of light and increasing the output of ATP, the important brain chemical for everything. So we knew that we could improve brain health and we could modify brain activity toward normal, literally doing the same thing.
And I had some questions around that, like getting, so for someone who wants to do this, you ideally you'd have an EEG done, and then which is not
and there are
always
plenty of
easy.
people.
Well,
Oh, there are
here,
plenty of people.
not in New Zealand.
I've
got a friend, Dr. Elizabeth Harris, who I believe you know.
Yes.
Yes, and she's
Yes.
like 10 miles, 10,000 miles away down the other end of the country.
Oh no.
Yeah. So for someone like my mum, I'm trying to work out,
Well,
can we use it without an EEG is the question.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But we can do it symptomatically. But something you should know, there is a way to get a QEEG system shipped to your house.
Oh, wow. And you don't need to
And
be
then
a clinician.
you can you open up you open up the case, you put on the cap, but there's a clinician looking at you over Skype
Computer.
or Zoom.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So they literally can tell you, no, move it over here. Okay, now tighten the strap. Okay, now turn it on. And the whole system is automated.
Wow.
So that as soon as you get the cap properly positioned, the technician can run the whole recording, and that's it.
Oh,
and then
wow.
once it's recorded, they can email me the recording, and I can do the rest.
Oh, wow. So, okay, we
Because
might be
then-
able to find someone who will do
Yeah,
that.
that's it's not inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, but it's not, thousands of dollars to get this done.
Wow. Okay.
And there could be clinicians in Australia and New Zealand who already have these suitcases that they can send
ship out.
around.
Okay, so we have to try to find that, because that would give a
We should-
next level. Yeah, like for people.
Yep,
And if we
yep.
can't get the neurofeedback, because there is only very few people in New Zealand doing neurofeedback, well, as far as I know, but then, I have to talk to Elizabeth. Maybe she knows people.
Well,
I know.
Well, that's another question. That's another question, Lisa. We have a home neurofeedback system that we developed years ago that people can buy for $2,500. And it's a laptop that's pre-configured with all of the software, that the EEG device, the electrodes, everything is in one package, and you just buy it for $2,500. and then one of our staff teaches people how to hook themselves up, because it's only a couple of ear clips and a couple of sticky things on your head wherever they need to go, then you're doing the neurofeedback in your living room.
Wow. And then you can.
So you can do the neurofeedback right after you use the helmet.
Right.
So the helmet is kind of like the primer for the brain to help improve plasticity. And then you do the neurofeedback in order to actually train very specifically what networks and what areas need to improve. So you can do the whole process yourself at home with some guidance and some supervision with me or, you know, some of the other people.
One of the clinicians.
It's very doable, Lisa. It's very, very doable. We have many, many people doing home training.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, you know, there's so many people dealing with dementia, and we need to get more, even, you know, people like myself and doing these things so that we all have access. Because if it's just, if you have to go to a clinic to use the neuronic, it's not going to happen. You know, we're not going to get the masses.
And not only that, but, you know, this is $3,500 or about, right? So there are a lot of people who can't afford $3,500.
Yeah. Yep.
So a colleague, a friend and colleague of mine who worked with me to set up Neuronic, because I was a co-founder of Neuronic. Neuronic is basically using all of the technology that Quiet Mind developed. We basically gave Neuronic all the technology, and now they're marketing it and developing it. And Quiet Mind is continuing the research, because that was one generation of device, and there are now several generations that need to come after that are going to have even greater impact and be more of a closed loop treatment model. But be that as it may, my colleague, Cera Turner, is now going to be coming out with a device called Cera Thrive, CERA Thrive, and Quiet Mind is going to be promoting that and distributing it here. So Cera Thrive is going to cost under $1,000.
Oh, wow. And that's going to do something similar.
It has a headband that includes 1070 and 3 other wavelengths for front and back stimulation, but it also has an integrated abdominal pad to treat the gut microbiome.
Wow.
So you can do the brain-gut connection at the same time.
Wow. Because I have a infrared and red light device that I have that called Flex Beam, and I use that on my gut and on Mum's gut at nighttime.
But yes.
As well, but it's not connected, you know, like it's separate.
Right. And Adeline Lim, I don't know if Adeline Lim is somebody you know, but Adeline, she's in Malaysia and Indonesia, and Adeline has been promoting the recharger. Sarah was one of the primary people developing the recharger when it first came out.
Yep.
And that was one of the things that got her thinking about the gut-brain connection, because Sarah had worked with me here in Philadelphia on the Neuradiant.
Wow. And
then she had already gotten the experience of the recharger. And so now she's put them together in a very elegant way that's much lower cost, and could be used with the neurofeedback exactly the same way as the Neuradiant.
Wow.
Or the V-Lite, for that matter. The NeuroPro does many of the same things that the Neuradiant does. It's $5,000.
Yeah,
but it's $5,000 US. So that's a drawback. But now with the Cera Thrive, that can be much, much, much cheaper and have very similar effects. We're going to start doing the clinical trials on the Cera Thrive as soon as they come on the market. They're literally like weeks away from release. So people can pre-order them, actually.
Okay.
I'll send you a link.
We can talk off air
for a discount.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you that later.
We'll talk on air about the different things and what we could possibly do together down here, and
happy to help.
Yeah, well, we have to get people access to them, because we need people and when people hear about red light, I mean, I'm sitting in a red light clinic with a hyperbaric, and I've got a red light panels behind me and stuff, and so I'm a huge fan of red light. But there
Right.
is so much nuance to the whole infrared. So can you just walk us through a little bit of red light history, and what are the wavelengths, and which wavelengths are you specifically using for brain function?
Sure.
And then the pulse, the fluence, all of that sort of technical stuff.
Well, okay, I want to keep the technical stuff pretty to a minimum,
Yeah.
but the idea of delivering pulsing, like turning the light on and off, that's what's called frequency. In this world, frequency is the number of times per second the light is being turned on and off. When we talk about wavelength, which is the 1070 or the 810 or the 940 or whatever, those are the points along the electromagnetic spectrum. So they're going from the actual speed of the waves, the electromagnetic waves themselves. How many of those are happening per second? How many up and downs? So that's the faster the wavelength, the closer and closer they are together. And the closer and closer they are together, the deeper they can penetrate.
Yep.
So comparing 800 to 1070, there's a difference in penetration, but there's also a difference in the effect in the brain tissue itself, because 1070 has the distinction of being the peak transmission in water.
Yes.
And we are mostly water. And when we influence the water, we are really influencing the way in which information is being carried throughout the system. Because the water is there, and the information in the water, the structure of the water, influences everything else that it touches. So that's a transmission medium that's different than the blood. It's different than the lymph. It's different than those kind of tissue lipids. It's not the same. It's water, but it carries a very different structure. And there's some good information about that on Cera's website at cerathrive.com. But we lectured on it for the advancement of functional medicine, the A4M.
Yep.
About structured water. Jerry Pollack's work. Have you had Dr. Pollack on?
No,
okay.
I haven't had him
so
on.
It's,
yeah, no.
Well, that's what we're talking about. So the wavelength is along the electromagnetic spectrum. The frequency is the pulse rate. The power density is the actual joules or the watts of power that are being delivered at the skin. And so the closer you get the light to the skin, the deeper the penetration. So panels have you at a distance, and the greater the distance, the power decreases by the square of the distance.
Yeah.
So it's a significant difference to go from right on the skin to even two inches away. It's a significant drop in power. So getting penetration, getting power into the brain, the light into the brain, it's really about how many photons can you get into the brain that are going to hit mitochondria and be absorbed by the mitochondria. The mitochondria have proteins in them. One of them is called cytochrome C oxidase. And that protein can absorb light within a certain waveband, which is the near infrared waveband.
Yep.
So the more times you can hit that protein with the light photons, the more it's going to speed up the production of ATP.
Which is everything in the brain, everything in the body.
It's a chemical catalyst for everything, right? So we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to go much further than high school biology to get the importance of stimulating ATP.
Yeah.
And more people are starting to understand how the second largest amount of ATP and neurons in the body are in the gut. So it's the brain and then the gut as far as the most neurons and most ATP. So it's so important to be working those two axes.
Wow. So I've intuitively done that, at least with that.
The recharger is a great way.
Yeah.
Another way to get light into the brain, which Dr. Lim was very right about, was intranasal.
Intranasal. Yeah. People on YouTube podcast, go and watch the video again. He's sticking something up his nose.
So you can now deliver 80 milliwatts of 1070 nanometer light directly into your nose which will then go up into your brain to some degree.
To some
But
degree.
what we're really looking to try with this is to see how much we can influence a reduction in the effects of COVID. Because we know that this wavelength of light, it can kill MRSA.
So it's
we know that it's going to be
antimicrobial, antiviral, as
it's
well
directly
as
antimicrobial and antiviral. So since the main access point for COVID is through the nose, if we can get the light up somebody's nose, we can decrease the infectivity, we can decrease the virulence, and we think we can decrease the long-term neurological injury that people are going to sustain from having had COVID.
And which is huge.
Well, it is. And one of the numbers, when you started talking about the millions of people, one of the things that I say in a lot of my lectures is, start thinking about what the number 350 million is. Like, try and get your mind around what 350 million anything is, right?
Huge.
If you take everybody with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and traumatic brain injury in the world, that's 150 million people. If you then add to that, at the most conservative estimate in the research now, you're somewhere between 10 and 20% of people, regardless of the severity of their COVID infection, are going to develop some degree of neurological injury.
Amazing.
That's 200 million more people. So that's 350 million people who should be doing this and this yesterday.
That need these. And so the difference with the cognolite that goes up the nose, so that's going to be that's the up the nose nasal one, that's going to be antiviral in the nose, but still also impacting the blood, because the blood, the whole entire blood supply goes past your nose, up above your nose in 4 minutes.
In 4 minutes.
And
so if you do this, you do this for 20 minutes, you've irradiated your whole body's blood supply 5 times.
And it's, there's ultraviolet irradiation that they use in ozone, for example. Is that similar?
That's the other end of the spectrum.
That's the blue light end of the spectrum, sort of the lower end.
And it does not stimulate ATP.
Right. So when we're talking about the ATP and the cytochrome C oxidase, so we have in the mitochondria, the electron transport chain, for those listening, you often, people have dysfunction in the first 2 to 3 complexes of that mitochondria. And so by going straight to being able to donate electrons to cytochrome C oxidase, we sort of bypass those problematic steps to produce energy. So this is another way of getting food without eating food. Basically, you're having energy production in a way.
Right.
I actually
very literally. Because the photons of energy are real packets of food.
And when we eat a plant or something, we're actually breaking it down and doing the process, and we're actually helping, bypass all of that and get to especially for people who have, low coenzyme Q10 and low, other things that cause mitochondrial dysfunction.